Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation on the different faces of evidence. The two questions we're going to be talking about today: what is evidence and what types of evidence are available to leaders, which are the two topics for topic one. Based on the readings, there's lots of different types of evidence. There's evidence on Alberta as a province, there's evidence as for our districts, and of course there's evidence for our schools. Some of the evidence is empirical evidence, so it's diploma results and it's PAT results. Other evidence is more anecdotal, what we see and hear, and having the opportunity to see evidence in front of our faces. One of the things I was struck by when I started doing the readings for this week was a quote from Klonowski, as quoted in Scott and Weber 2016, and this is actually from last semester's course, chapter 11 of the Scott et al. Book. One of the key findings from this investigation into fair assessment for Aboriginal students, leaders and teachers in both studies who demonstrated limited expertise and training in the analysis and use of test scores and other performance. Although principals repeatedly were observed attempting to use test score data as evidence for decision making, there were very few instances where school leaders had specialized training or relevant experience or expertise in data analysis. And I think that's really fair. My first degree is actually a commerce degree, so I have some statistics background, but most teachers come into teaching as their first degree, and then they become leaders. So how do we help those leaders understand that there is important data to be analyzed? I'm going to take a different tactic on this, however, because I really liked the source that we read about the source using walkthroughs to gather data for school improvement. In my commerce degree, I worked at CIBC for 10 years, and we had this phrase, and I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I know management by objectives was very much a commerce theme when I was at university the first time, but we also came up with this idea of management by walking around. So the idea that you knew what was happening in your organization based on evidence you gathered yourself. I really liked the article that we read. Walkthroughs were used regularly to monitor how teachers are using identified instructional strategies to improve student achievement in reading across the curriculum. Two really important things going on here. First of all, walkthroughs were used regularly, so teachers became comfortable with them being used. The second was, though, that it seems like the group of people, based on this article, had already decided what strategies they were going to focus on. So this was actually, the walkthroughs was an accountability piece. The third part I really liked about this author's take on this was the written feedback. They focused on being positive, specific, and descriptive. And the feedback included a question to enhance reflective practice of the teacher, which I thought was excellent as well. This brings me to something in Calgary Catholic called the Leadership Academy. And using evidence to inform decision making is actually part of what Calgary Catholic, the district that I teach in, wants teachers to be, leaders to be doing. So there was an article by Kim Marshall called "What's a Principal to Do? When you can't do it all, what are the highest leverage activities?" And one of the three that he identifies as the highest leverage activity is mini observations. When principals make frequent unannounced supervisory visits to all classrooms with a specific goal in mind of the number of visits per day, which the author used 5 visits per day. They're using effective sampling techniques and are far more likely to be able to answer several key questions. Are teachers on track with the curriculum? Do students seem to be learning? Which staff members need closer attention and support? Who deserves special praise? So this then leads me to another book that came out of the Leadership Academy. It's called The Way of the Shepherd. So basically, Calgary Catholic has used this book to guide practice for leaders. And so of the 7 techniques that leaders, effective leaders use, the first one is called Know the Condition of Your Flock. Now there's a huge Catholic analogy here, of course. Jesus was a shepherd. But the idea that knowing your flock means being out in the halls. And one of the specific outcomes from this chapter, or pieces of feedback from the chapter, I'm just going to get to the right page. Keep your eyes and ears open, question, and follow through. So I think that was all very clear in what the readings that I did for this topic. So my controversy, I guess it is to say that teachers and leaders being able to analyze data isn't the point. The point is coming up with a fairly defined idea of how to achieve success within your school, and then gathering data at that school level. So I wanted to share what happened lately at Notre Dame High School. We've just been putting our toes in the water for the high school redesign. And some of you who are teaching high school are thinking, we've been doing high school redesign for years. We are late to the party, as our current principal says, and basically the idea that we needed to see what the climate was like in our school building. So what I did, I offered to become a part of this, and I created a Google form, and we surveyed the teachers now and other staff members. So it wasn't just teachers who responded. So we have about 100 staff, and almost 65% of them responded in some way to the survey, which I thought was brilliant. One of the reasons we're going through high school redesign is to improve high school completion rates. And I did look up that data because I thought that that was important data to have for this particular talk. So at my high school, the 3-year completion rate for, which means grade 10s finishing high school in 3 years, is 85%, and the 4-year rate is 91%. And I am really quite proud of that. Not that I get to take credit for it, but the provincial average for 3 years is 76%, and for 4 years is 81%. So we're basically 10% better than the province after 4 years. So what we're trying to do, of course, is get that to 100. When I refer back to that original quote that I had from the Scott et al. Book, I don't think you need to be a brilliant statistician to be able to analyze that particular data. And I understand that there's more details behind that, and there's more accountability when it comes to PAT results and diploma results, this safe and caring schools, and there's all sorts of other criteria that schools are gauged against. But I really think that focusing on 1 or 2 objectives and working as a staff on how to complete that. So 2 pieces of evidence were used to design the process going forward. The first, as I said, was the survey that we did with our teachers. The second was a survey that we did with our students, formerly called the Tell Them From Me survey. It's now called the Our School survey. And it fairly mimicked this SOSQ that's also referred to in one of the readings this week, the Moving Beyond Achievement Data reading, talked about this student orientation to school questionnaire. How are they feeling about school? How engaged are they, but what are their levels of anxiety? And one of the things that came out of the Tell Them From Me survey that we did this past fall was that kids, not only in Notre Dame, but pretty much all of Calgary Catholic, are feeling very anxious about school. There's high levels of anxiety and stress. So the idea is to try to reduce that stress, along with trying to get teachers on board of how to do that. So the 2 surveys combined informed our decision making going forward. So starting this next semester coming up, which starts at the end of this month, we've actually redesigned the schedule. We've shortened some classes. We've added time in the day for students to receive extra help instead of outside the day. So we used to provide tutorial time at 8:20. Now we're providing it at 9 o'clock 2 times a week. One of the things I really like about that is it also values the commitment of teachers, where teachers who have young kids who have to drop them off were under pressure to arrive at school at 20 after 8 when tutorial time was starting, or find some other time. So it either had to be at lunch or after school. So this way, the tutorial time is embedded in the day. If students are all caught up, and we know that it's not the students that are behind in their subjects that sometimes face anxiety, it's the kids who are getting 80s and 90s who are facing that anxiety. They have that opportunity to go either chill with their friends or be in front of a teacher with a smaller group, hopefully doing work that will reduce that anxiety level and help them feel more prepared. So basically, again, I guess my controversy is that I don't believe that teachers and administrators need to be expert statisticians. I believe that they can find relevant data, choose a goal using their staff to create that goal setting model or that objective, and then find ways within their own school environment to be able to meet that objective. With the article that talked about using the walkthroughs, they were very specific. They were trying to improve student achievement in reading across the curriculum. So that principal, walking into that classroom, knew exactly what she was looking for and could provide really powerful feedback to the teachers that she had observed. So I guess my ask going forward is to find out whether or not you agree with this analysis and your thoughts about what I used to call management by walking around. Thanks for listening.